they suggest that metaphors not only make our thoughts more vivid and interesting, but that they actually structure our perceptions and understanding. Thinking of marriage as a contract agreement, for example, leads to one set of expectations, while thinking of it as a team play or a negotiated settlement or Russian roulette or an indissoluble merger or a religious sacrament will carry all those carry different sets of expectations. And that, that this book and the research that went into it led to, among not just academicians, but also I think it's the popular wisdom that of how profoundly metaphors change our view of what things are. And I was thinking as I was sitting here about, we used to call steward and stewardesses, they're now flight attendants, but they don't do anything differently. There's just a different name, and it has different connotations about their role. I also agree with what the opponents say about that this wording change wouldn't necessarily reduce animal abuse. I mean, I think the people who do that aren't going to be affected by this. But we would be talking about the youth and children, and that if there was a trickle-down effect of this word, that it would become more commonplace. What was my thought about that, though, specifically? When I was up here, I was thinking about not abusers, but many friends and family members over the course of my lifetime, and this doesn't happen a lot, of people who've adopted dogs or purchased dogs and then returned their dogs, brought them back to a shelter or gave them away. I mean, giving them away, I suppose, isn't so bad, but taking a dog back to a shelter. And those people are not abusers, but I think maybe if the term guardian became something that we all just used more automatically, like we say flight attendant, we might begin to think of, the connotations that go along with guardian, which is respect and caring and compassion, responsibility, and that might influence. I mean, we can't document it objectively, at least we haven't yet, but it might influence those friends and family members who have taken ownership of a dog and then returned it and didn't think ahead of time about what it meant. So I would support a change in the code where we say owner/guardian with the definition of, guardian being what is an owner. But I want to say that I don't see it as replacing the word owner. I see it as an addition, as an enhancement of our understanding of what an owner is. And I think that that's an important, an important comment on it, that because our city attorney had said, well, why, people might wonder, why are we using the term guardian if it isn't really a guardian, if it's no different from an owner? But I think what we're doing is we're enhancing our understanding of what an owner is by having owner/guardian. So I would even go so far as to make a motion that we do that we adopt an ordinance where I don't have it right in front of me, but that we use the owner/guardian terminology.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Well, my one question is that if we're going for this compromise concept, is that superior to and/or guardian? Is that from a legal point of view or
Well, if you say and or,
point of view?
then and or generally
Is
bothers
the
me
same
anyway. It's either and or. It can't be both and or. But then you're suggesting, if you do that, you're suggesting that those two words can be interpreted separately. I think guardian/owner, we could do that. I'm also wondering if maybe we shouldn't include a section in this ordinance that sets forth what the council's intent is. Have a sort of legislative intent section to explain that the intent is not to change the meaning of the responsibilities of the owner toward the pet under the terms of the ordinance, but to just put out into the public the idea that they could refer to themselves as guardian without, and sort of encourage more thoughtfulness about the relationship with their pet or something like that. So put in some explanation as to why you're doing this, so that in the future, if people are reading this and saying, well, they said guardian, but they don't really mean guardian, they mean owner/guardian, or they mean owner, what the heck were they doing? Why'd they bother? You could have something in the ordinance that explains that, and that would maybe do a little bit more to avoid possible future confusion.
Would you draft that?
Sure.
Sort of, if the founding
I
fathers...
try to do better than I just did, but when I'm back in my office and can think,
If the founding fathers had explained what they meant by cruel and unusual punishment, what their intent was, then we wouldn't need the Supreme Court. Councilmember Thomas.
Mr. Rapport, in addition to responsibilities remaining with the owner guardian being unchanged, might that also be their rights with regard to the animal? In terms of, this doesn't mean that someone can take away the pet.
Well, I want to maybe explain something. This is a city ordinance that has, regulates very specific conduct. It's not a state statute that's defining, the rights and obligations of pet owners. It's establishing that you have to keep your dog on a leash. You have to have him licensed and vaccinated. If he's annoying the neighbors, you have to control him. It's those specific things. So the use of the term in the ordinance is not changing the broader laws that apply to, the rights of someone who owns an animal. The city council doesn't have that authority. You certainly, and even if you had the authority, this ordinance isn't exercising that authority. This ordinance is, like I said at the beginning, focused on animal control within the city limits. So no matter what you do as far as defining these terms, you're not going to change other laws that city council has no jurisdiction over. But
If we were to pass a motion that is before us to change the language where owner is stated to owner/guardian, can that be enacted tonight, or does that need?
Well, you could tell me to do that, and I could bring it back, and as long as it just did that, I think if you made the change before you adopt the ordinance, before you introduce the ordinance, you could adopt it at the next meeting. If you want me to include this statement of intent, I think it probably would be better for it to come back before you introduce it, bring it back for the next meeting, or to introduce it so you have a chance to review that language and approve it.
I think I would prefer that we not state our intent, given that my intent may be different than Councilmember Roden's intent. And secondly, it'll make the interpretation in 10 or 15 years more interesting if we don't state our intent.
Give lawyers something to do.
And it seems to be slightly a nervous attempt to water down what we're doing if we do that. So, I wouldn't vote against it on the grounds that we were trying to state our intent, but I don't think it's necessary. So we have a motion on before us. Is there further discussion?
Well, I would like to request that if this should pass, that we ask the city attorney to draft a statement of intent, and then we can discuss at a later time if we want to keep it or not, if it represents the intent of all of us.
But that's not part of the motion. That wasn't part of the original motion.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your